Evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of San Carlos City Council meeting and successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency. Would you all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may have noticed that we are one short tonight. Councilmember Olbert is home ill, and we hope he gets well soon. Mark, if you're watching, rest up. Okay, the first order of business is, are there any changes to the order of the agenda?
No changes from staff this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and we'll move on now to council communications and announcements. Matt, why don't we start with you? You're not ready. All right, we'll go on to Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few things to report on. I attended a bond subcommittee meeting to talk about the proposed bond measure to purchase the Black Mountain site with Mark Olbert. It was a good discussion. Some of the topics that were covered included hiring bond counsel to advise the city on specific language. We also reviewed some copy for some public information and a flyer, essentially, that's going to talk about the bond measure to let people know, and a plan for reaching out to the public and various organized groups around town. I also attended the 2+2 committee meeting, which is 2 members of the school board and 2 members of the city council, again with Mark Olbert. Some of the topics that we covered included working together on shuttle service, potentially an upgrade to the flex service that Samtrans currently has to something more like the Scoot service that we used to have that might help ease traffic and provide some alternative transportation for students getting to school. We also reviewed the Four Corners working group proposals and had a good discussion about that. We also talked about the crossing guard program, and I think we're going to have, I know it's been an interest to some of my colleagues about, we are now contributing to the crossing guard program financially and talking about whether or not that's going to be expanded. We had a good discussion, and I expect the school district to come and present to us about that. I attended the mayor's excellent State of the City speech at Devil's Canyon. It was a great event last week. Great speech, great venue. Really, really nice job by the mayor, and good event by the Chamber of Commerce. I also attended an event that Congresswoman Jackie Spear hosted for mayors and city councilmen in San Mateo County on Friday. She gave a general legislative update about things that are happening or not happening in Washington, D.C. And specifically, we spent a lot of time talking about housing and issues related to affordable housing. There was a presentation from the College of San Mateo board about how they've been building some faculty housing on their campuses and talking about the success of that program. So it was a good example of a public agency kind of taking the affordable housing challenge by the reins and doing something positive about it. And I think that is all.
Thanks, Cameron. Bob?
Mr. Mayor, I attended a Silicon Valley Clean Water meeting along with our esteemed Mr. Jay Walters. Ray Walter. We are on track on budget, and we're going to be approving the new budget for next year, probably next month. Still looking to decide where to lay. Is it the 60-inch or 48-inch? 60-inch wide pipe. It's going to go through Redwood Shores somewhere. And not difficulty, but the decision is vis-a-vis cost versus time versus location. So we'll be discussing that at our next month meeting, probably of the board for that. I also attended the mayor's State of the City address. It was very good. Since we're kissing up to the mayor tonight, it's a great job. No, seriously, it was a very nice job, and I think he brought everyone in the audience up to what is going on in San Carlos now, and that's the key, I think, to to those speeches is to let people know what is happening in the city. Friday night, I wasn't able to go to Congresswoman Spears' event, but I was able to go to the Lions Club 50th annual dinner to honor police and fire responders in our county. They honored folks up and down the county for valor as well as for service, and that was a very nice event. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Matt?
So I didn't have any official duties like, these committee meetings or anything like that. But I did get an invitation from John Ward to meet with a fella from, what's the name of that development company, Jeff? Windy Hill, yeah. To show me a project that they're thinking about on the east side that is, if folks know where our sign is on the freeway, the electronic sign, it's the Tanklage Properties right there that's adjacent to our sign. So I met with Mr. Ward and the developer about that project and let them get me up to speed on what they're thinking about. And just so the public knows, at least, my thing, I think it's the same thing with all the council members. When we do such things, we're not there to give a commitment or, anything like that, take sides on an issue. It's just another opportunity to dig into some of the details and get some ideas about what they're thinking about before something like that would come to the public and come to a public meeting where everybody would get a chance to look at it. And we would get another chance to ask questions and so forth. I did that last week. I did have one question, Mr. Mayor, because before this meeting, I was looking over my emails and I see that I'm scheduled to go to the ALUC meeting as a primary, and I was an alternate on that, and I don't recall us going through any changes on our assignments, but I seem to have had some assignment changes.
Which meeting was that?
This is the Airport Land Use Committee. I was the alternate on that, and now it looks like I've been made the primary on that. And I didn't know we had made any changes to our assignments. So,
I did notice actually when we did the reorganization or when we did the committee assignments in January or February that change had been made. So I'd been the primary, you were the alternate, and we switched that this time around.
Is that something you want to discuss?
usually
we can certainly review it.
yeah, at some point I'd like to discuss it because usually that's what we do is, go over those and kind of divvy them up and so forth. And that wasn't done, so I didn't expect any kind of change. And now, frankly, it leaves me a little confused as to what my assignments are.
Okay. Well, maybe Jeff and I can go through that and just take another look at it and see which is the way it should be. Sure. Yeah. Okay. We're going to meet tomorrow. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Add that to the list of things we need to talk
And then just
about.
one more item, because I'd brought it up last time, was there's a fellow who owns a property here in town. It's historic in nature. It's residential, and he was trying to do some work, including work to his garage. And I had asked the council about possibly looking at that, our ordinances versus what the state and federal ordinances are in historic structures. And so I got in touch with Mr. Savay about it. He's written back to me an email. So it's kind of in the works, I'd say.
Okay.
Okay. Just
Great.
an update.
Thank you. And I just have a few things. It's the nice thing about going last is everybody keeps bringing up things that I'd forgotten that I'd done in the last couple of weeks, but trying to organize this. We did have a strategic planning council meeting a couple of days after our last council meeting, and that's all we do at these meetings is talk about the projects that we want to accomplish over the next 6 months. We also look at the past 6 months. We look at short range and long range objectives and goals. And it's sort of a way to keep score on ourselves and make sure that we're sort of following the plans and the ideas and the suggestions that the public and we have set out for ourselves. So that happened on the 11th. Also went to the the chamber mixer, as many people may know, San Carlos Chamber of Commerce has relocated beginning of this year from South Laurel. It was down at the corner of White Oak Way and Laurel Street, and they moved right here in the library next door. So they had a mixer to sort of introduce everybody to the new facility, and it was a great event attended by a lot of people. The following night was a Four Corners Working Group presentation. It was really a public workshop, and the Four Corners Working Group, as Cameron alluded to, is this committee that I'm on, and that Bob Grisilli and I are both on, to deal with the traffic problems surrounding Carlmont High School and Tierra Linda. It's, as anybody who's traveled that corridor knows, it's a highly impacted and difficult area to deal with. And what we're trying to do is come up with some solutions to mitigate the traffic there. The traffic consultant has come up with 3 alternatives. We're going to meet, I think the next meeting is next Monday night. And that, by the way, these are all public meetings. I think if once I get confirmation, the meeting will be at Belmont City Hall. But we're going to try to narrow these alternatives down. And then there's going to be another public workshop at Tierra Linda, probably around the end of April. Everyone will be invited. It'll be on eNotify, and we will get notices out to everybody so that they can have input. And we really do want the public's input, because once we all settle on a solution, we want to make sure that we've listened to everybody, and then we implement something that is going to be of value and will be workable for the people who drive those streets. After that, I also met with the developer from Windy Hill. His name is Mike Field, last week, and as Matt said, it's a chance for us to just get educated on what they are trying to accomplish. We don't commit to them. No one makes any promises, but we tell them some of the issues that they may have to deal with from the public. And this obviously helps when they come back. They can sort of refine their proposals, but it will be a public process when this project comes forward. And then on the 18th. One of the things that happens every year is the Peninsula Volunteer sponsors this thing called the Mayors for Meals, and it's part of the Meals on Wheels program. And we delivered meals to elderly people who still live in their own homes in town. And it was the first time I've ever done it. I know Matt's done it and Bob's done it. Mark did it last year. Cameron will, if he hasn't done it, will do it. It was really an eye-opening morning, and you've got a lot of independent seniors that live alone, and sometimes the only contact they have, if they have very little or no family, is the people that come and bring them meals. Some people have meals delivered every day, some 2 or 3 times a week, but it was a really nice experience for me to be part of that. And I will tell you, there's this one woman named Lois who lives on Elm Street that we delivered a meal to. This woman is 96 years old. No walker, no cane, not an ounce of fat on her, and alert as they can be, and lives by herself. She's lived in the house since 1946. I was just blown away, and it was an immaculate house. And then the last thing I went to was the State of the City address, which I was required to be at because it's given by the mayor. So, and I thank everybody for going, and I appreciate the great feedback. It was a great evening, and it was a lot of fun getting ready for it and presenting it and having a lot of people there. So that's all I have. Matt, your light is on. Is there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, something I forgot to bring up is some of us at least received an email about a property downtown and their lack of maintenance and the unsightliness that it's becoming. And I had responded back to this person that perhaps something we could look at is having an ordinance that is similar to what we do with sidewalks and other things, where we're asking a property owner to repair their frontage. And if they ignore the notices, then we do the work and put the price of the job on their property tax bill. And so I wanted to see if there was any interest amongst the council members on looking at such an ordinance, even if it's possible to do, or if we want to do something like that. at first strike, it might come off as being a little heavy-handed, but there are times where, we're trying to get in touch with property owners that don't live here, or there might be a property that's in a public trust and it's difficult to, nail somebody down. And then it's going into disrepair, and like I say, it can be unsightly. So anyways, I wanted to bring that up, see if there's any other interest on the council in something like that.
Well, I was going to say, I think we have Mr. Rubens, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have ordinances, I think, in place sort of already for that, don't we? To, if there's issues of blighted areas or blighted property, that we can have our code enforcement folks go out?
There is a code section 15.24 in our municipal code that talks about property maintenance, and I can report back on whether or not our current ordinance would cover that.
I didn't mean to cut
No,
you off,
that's
but I
the
think we have
perfect
something.
thing.
Maybe after we get a report back, if we're not happy with it, I suppose we could
There you go.
schedule another discussion on a more formal basis. Okay, let's see. We have next staff comments. Any comments by staff?
Yeah, just one this evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As you're aware, the city's been in the process of refinancing the general obligation bonds for the San Carlos Library, which was built in 1997, 98. The bonds were issued in 97. The bonds sold on the 5th of March through a competitive process. The city received 8 bids, and ultimately Wells Fargo was selected with a true interest rate of 1.66%, which is even lower than what our estimates had shown. This is going to result in a reduction that residents will see on their tax bills next year. From on average, the average resident pays $47 right now, down to $28, so about a 40% reduction in that cost on the bonds moving forward through 2026.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are now at 5A, presenting, I can't even talk. I forgot to tell everybody I went to spring training this weekend, so I did I had a lot of fun, so I guess that's contributing. We're going to present a proclamation to the winners of the Rethink Waste 2014 America. And I'm going to come around. And we have Samantha Campbell and Amanda Lee. Amanda? Samantha and Amanda. How are you? Good. All right. Well, Samantha and Amanda have been selected the second and third place winners of Rethink Waste 2014 America Recycles Day poster contest. And so tonight we're going to give them a couple of proclamations by the city. And it is very impressive that, I don't know how many people were involved in this contest, but you guys got second and third place. Are your posters here? Can we take a look at them? Oh, of course we can take a look at them. They're just not back there. Wow, that is amazing. All right. Now, where are these posters going to be displayed?
So they will be displayed at the Shoreway Environmental Center, and then they'll be used for e-newsletters and different outreach materials. And actually, our first place winner will be, their poster will be on a truck, one of the Recology trucks. Mm-hmm. My name is Heather with Rethink Waste.
Thank you, Heather. Let me just read in part what the proclamations say. Whereas Rethink Waste, formed in 1982, is a leader in the delivery of innovative waste reduction and recycling programs. And whereas America Recycles Day, held annually on November 15th, is the only nationally recognized day and community-driven national awareness event dedicated to the promoting and celebrating recycling in the United States. And 216 poster submissions were received showcasing the artistic talent and creativity of the students in San Mateo County. Well, that is quite impressive. Samantha, you go to Central Middle School. You're in 6th grade. And how about you, Amanda? And you're also in 6th grade. Okay. Well, congratulations to the two of you. Samantha, this is for you. And Amanda, here is yours. And thank you both very much for participating. I could never draw that well. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. For me, it would be stick figures all the way. All right, now we're going to move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters not on the agenda may do so at this time. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If an item you are speaking on is not listed on the agenda, please be advised that the City Council may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed under the Brown Act. The City Council's general policy is to refer the items to staff for attention or have the matter placed on a future City Council agenda for more comprehensive action or a report and a formal public discussion at that time. All right, I don't have any speakers. Yes, sir, did you want to come up and address us? You can fill out a speaker slip when you're done.
Mayor, City Council members, my name is Stephen Mathias, and I am the president of New Form Technology Research Center. It is a research center that was founded in San Carlos, California, here in the year 2000 by Frank Chester. At the research center, we are researching a form that Frank Chester discovered called the Chestahedron. I have a little model here showing the form. It is the first ever 7-sided form with equal areaed sides. Through Frank Chester's research, he discovered that this form is the geometry of the human heart. So at the research center, right over here on Terminal Way, we are applying this to different areas of life. And so through Frank's work, he actually invented a mixing technology, a patented mixing technology based on this geometry, which is, when applied to water, enhances the quality of the water. He also invented a patent pending on a propeller technology that's based on this geometry. The reason why I'm here tonight is to invite you all to our 2-year anniversary party. We're having that party on Sunday, this Sunday, from 2 to 5 p.m., right over here in our little garage on Industrial Way. So I have an invitation here. One of the long-range plans of the research center is to establish what he calls, he's designed, he's an architect as well, he designed a heart building. And in this beautiful book, you can see a rendition. He actually built a model of this heart building based on this geometry that he discovered. And so our plans at the research center is to develop products to raise money. We also have a nonprofit portion of the research center, which is called the Frank Chester Foundation. And all of the, what we're trying to do is raise money to establish this building. This building will be an international destination, and the reason why I'm bringing this to you is to plant the seed with you, because the reason why Frank picked San Carlos is because it's the heart of Silicon Valley. So this is all I have to share. My time is up, and I just have an invitation that I'd like to share with each member of the City Council. Okay.
That's great. Go ahead and give it to the clerk. Thank you, Steve. And what was the name of your organization again?
It's called New Form Technology.
New Form Technology.
That's
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Is there any other member of the public who would wish to speak? Thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name is Linda Matos. I'm a citizen of the city of San Carlos, and I have to say this is something I'm not very comfortable doing. However, I'm here on behalf of those who did not have the courage, the time, or they've resigned themselves to the fact that nothing can be done. I had a huge speech written out about all of their concerns these neighbors that I'm here representing. In essence, it's David versus Goliath. I will try to keep this brief. On March 12, 2015, I sent a letter to the members of the council and copied the city planners. This letter outlined my concerns about the overbuilding of residential lots in San Carlos, mostly in reference to recent applications for permits, as you can tell, as permits on Sunset Drive. A few neighbors and I have attended the RDRC meeting on March 16th for 819 Sunset, San Carlos. We had many concerns we wanted to address, and we bravely took that opportunity. We spoke about the fact that these are two builders, non-residents, non-homeowners that have bought these homes with no nostalgia to the neighborhood, and they plan to build up to 4,000 square foot houses on these sites. We talked about the impact of these houses on not only Sunset Drive, but on the city of San Carlos as a whole. We talked about losing equity in homes because $1 million views are going to be lost. We talked about losing privacy, losing sun, these homes that are not in harmony with the neighborhood. We talked about the impact on the environment, such as the drought we are currently experiencing. We talked about the impact on the infrastructure, which have already had 2 water main breaks and several gas leaks on our street alone. We talked about the impact on the overcrowding of schools. We talked about the property values that we are pricing everyone out of the city. We asked for more time to understand our options about these permits that have been filed, since this is a complicated process, and some of us were only given a few weeks' notice. Some of us only a few days. Others were unaware of these proposed developments on either side of them. I would like the San Carlos City Council to consider opening discussion on the concerns of city zoning and codes. A recent grassroots effort has been launched to save the unique character of the city of San Carlos. Many of us have expressed our concerns that nothing can be done with the recent projects, and many have expressed concerns over the changes in our town. There is nothing wrong with reasonable, responsible, and equitable development. However, it seems the city planners have sold out to big bucks developers on Sunset Drive, and we are set to lose another. The property rights of the existing neighbors, the impact on the environment, the impact on the infrastructure have basically been considered inconsequential. In closing, at that meeting and at this meeting, I feel like I'm wasting my breath because these decisions have already been made without any of us having an opportunity to discuss it further. What I'd like to imagine is San Carlos in 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else wish to address the council? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Through staff, if it goes through RC, or whatever it's RDCC, whatever the acronym is this week, then it goes to Planning Commission?
Is this one?
I'm sorry, Mr. Su.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
So is there
Most residential projects like this don't
So is there
typically require planning.
is there an appeal process that someone could,
From the RDRC decision, yes, there's an appeal
how many
process.
days did they, or would they have from the date of the event? So that was what, the 16th? So they'd have not 10 working days, but 10 days?
10 calendar days.
10 calendar days, so it'd be the 26th would be the last date they could appeal it. But they could appeal it, it would cost, do we know how much it would cost? Is it about 2,600? Please, okay? I'm trying here, okay? Thanks. $2,600? Okay, all right. Well, I just want to make sure that people are aware of there is a process. So, all right, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 7, approval of the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. Yes.
The animal control service. I wanted to pull that just to give an opportunity for them to.
Is that San Mateo County?
There is somebody here.
Yeah,
So
we do have somebody here.
okay. So I just wanted to pull it because I feel like an item like that where we're contracting with another agency, if they can give us just an update on their services, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Any others?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve consent calendar items A through F and H and adopt ordinance 1484, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos repealing existing municipal code section 5.44 and 5.48 and replacing with a new San Carlos Municipal Code chapter 5.44 regulating solicitation in the City of San Carlos.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. Crystal?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right.
And Mr.
Matt, you had a question?
I was just going to suggest, I mean, you can deal with it how you like, but perhaps we want to allow our guests to go ahead and speak and
Just
before we
take
go
care of
through
it now?
Yeah, if
I
you're
don't have
okay
any
with
problem
that.
with it. Anybody else? Any objections? Okay.
You have questions, Mr. Grocott? Is that what
I
you
don't, I
wanted to
don't
speak
have
to?
questions. I think a contract like this that we're re-upping, just to give that agency an opportunity to give us an update on what's going on with their agency and what they're doing. Okay. So
Short.
short and sweet. Yes.
I'm Pam Machado. I work for the County of San Mateo. I'm the program manager for animal control and licensing. So basically how it works in our county is that the cities contract with the county to do their animal control and licensing, and the county turns around and contracts some of those tasks to Peninsula Humane Society, some of the control tasks, and the licensing tasks to Pet Data, located down in Texas. So whenever this contract comes up, and it hasn't come up for 11 years, we get a committee together of city and county representatives. We talk first to Peninsula Humane Society and talk about concerns that we have. And there have been many this past time because it's been a while since we sat down at the table and really talked about it. Half Moon Bay was very vocal in what they wanted us to look at this time. And their mayor, last time an amendment was approved, issued a letter that we use kind of as the template for negotiations. So in a nutshell, what we decided this time, again, city representatives and county representatives, along with Peninsula Humane Society, said we wanted a 5-year contract. And the reason for doing that is because we're in the middle, we're starting the process of building a shelter. And we felt that the shelter would probably be built in about 3 years. We want to give the current contractor about 2 years of being in the building so we could see what utility rates look like, how the care of the animals improved because of the new facility. We wanted to give him time to settle into that new building before we decided what the next steps were. There has been a lot of interest over the years going out for a request for proposal this next time around. So we are asking you to approve a contract for 5 years. It would expire in June of 2020. The cost for Peninsula Humane Society, which is the bulk of the contract, rises. There's no increase in fee the first year. The second, third, fourth, and fifth year, there's 2.5% to 3% increase. We put in an incentive clause that we had negotiated down in the last amendment to where if the contractor, Peninsula Humane Society in this instance, was able to find efficiencies and do the work without cutting what we want them to do, we would get, the county would split whatever cost savings Peninsula Humane Society was able to find. So that cost savings goes back to the program and offsets the cost to all the cities and the unincorporated part of the county. So that's a 50-50 split over the course of the 5 years. The methodology for invoicing was another concern of the Half Moon Bay mayor. We wanted it to be more in line with how the money is actually spent by the contract. And so the methodology being used had been 27% for field services and 73% for shelter services. We negotiated that to 49% and 51%. which will give us a better, each city, they'll be able to see what dollar amounts actually go to the contract, in what areas. Licensing revenue. This was one of the big things we negotiated on this 5-year contract. In the past, licensing revenue that is brought in by the county, Pet Data, or Peninsula Humane Society, all three of us collect licensing revenue, it was split evenly through over the program. So it wasn't fair to those cities that actually were aggressive in trying to get licensing revenue coming in to their cities. Licensing revenue on a public health side helps us to monitor the vaccinations of the pets, which keeps our rabies down. So what we're doing, this new contract, this 5-year contract, is whichever city actually brings in the revenue through Pet Data, Peninsula Humane Society, or the county, they get credit against the animal cost, the animal control costs. So that should help significantly those cities that actually reach out. The county is currently working on an outreach toolkit that each city can use, and we're asking the cities to loan us their interns this summer so we can put together something really good, which again will help the cities in their animal control cost. We are bringing in, very new to the program, we're bringing in an outside auditor to do a program audit of Peninsula Humane Society because it is such a large dollar amount. They'll do one program audit through the 5-year contract. The cities will be part of hiring that auditor, and the counties, of course, will process it through. We better defined the response time for Peninsula Humane Society. That was of concern. And the Peninsula Humane Society has agreed to let a committee of city council members or city managers meet with their board of directors at a minimum of 1 time per year during the course of the contract. So we felt that we addressed all of Half Moon Bay's concerns, and they're pretty much common concerns throughout the cities. And that's my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Go ahead, Matt.
I have just one question. That is primarily for the sake of the public. When folks have a animal control issue, first line of contact is what? 911, the sheriff's department, or is there a way to contact directly to your organization?
They can contact Peninsula Humane Society directly, or they can contact me, and I will transfer the call to Peninsula Humane Society. Most of the calls that we receive from the public are for control. You know, I have a stray dog outside my house, a dead raccoon in my street, or what have you. So it's fairly easy. Most people, residents believe that Peninsula Humane Society is animal control, so the calls usually go directly to them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I apologize. I had one question myself. Sorry. Do you have occasions where people do call 911 and what do they do? Do they just immediately route the call to you or what?
Depending on the type of call it is, if it's a dangerous call where there's a dangerous animal that's out on the loose or something, it will go to animal control. They're 24/7.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
All right.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to move approval of item G, if I may.
All right.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Crystal?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. Moving on to reports to council. We have a report on PG&E test update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, Mr. Malpe. My name is Bill Chang. I'm your local PG&E, local government relations representative here to give you a quick update on what's going on with line 147. On your screen, you will see an image that we'll describe in a little bit. A little bit of background: the inline inspection of line 147 started as we discussed in early to mid-January with some geometry runs and whatnot that ran through about mid-February. Based on the collected data using various tools from 2 vendors, the eventual run of the so-called SmartPig or the MFL tool was halted because some of the data from the early geometry runs showed some concerns regarding the safe passage of the tool through the pipeline. Now, let me emphasize that the concerns created by the data do not show any kind of danger to the pipeline itself. The concerns were completely focused on the efficient passage of the tool itself and not of the safe operation of the pipeline. The pipeline remains in safe operation at the proper pressures. So the concerns involve 2 spots on line 147, and what we plan to do is to excavate these 2 spots, get eyes on them, take a look at what might be causing the concerns provided by the data, and with the ultimate goal of replacing some bends that we know are in those 2 spots. It's a total of 4 bends in those 2 spots, and the goal is to replace those bends with call it shallower bends, longer lead bends, so that they allow a more efficient passage of the tool through those 2 places, and with the ultimate goal of resuming the MFL runs or resuming the inline inspection in late April or early May. And in preparation for doing that, this week we've already started reaching out to customers and residents in the 2 areas affected, and including specifically 4 private property sites in what we'll see in a little bit Site 2, and our land agents and our customer service specialists will be out there speaking with them specifically. So if can you see Site 1 on your? Let's go to Site 1 first. If you see Site 1, that is the green area. That is Britton Avenue, and the street just to the lower left is the Alameda, and so that is Site 1. There is a valve spot in the green area, and that's the work area, and it involves 4 bends, 4 up-down bends that are in close proximity to each other, and when we did our geometry runs, a couple of the tools had some difficulty getting through those 4 bends because those 4 bends are pretty much 90-degree bends in very close proximity to each other. And so some of the concern is that the MFL tool, which is heavier and less flexible than the previous geometry tools, will have similar challenges getting through those areas. And so that's one of the areas that we'd like to excavate and take a look at, and perhaps probably replace those bends with shallower bends to allow the tool to pass more efficiently. So let's go on to Site 2, please. Site 2, this is, you'll see the work area. That is Britton Avenue above you. And as you'll see, the work area is behind 6 homes in and the access will probably be off of Tasker Lane there. And so we will be speaking to 5 or 6, I believe 6 homeowners there to get their permissions to access the work area that are in their backyards, basically. So there will be some discussion there with the homeowners, perhaps some removal of some fencing and whatnot, but that's all private property back there. So we'll be speaking to those homeowners individually. And with me is Jeff Janvier, one of our senior engineers on the project. He's one of our senior engineers in the Pipeline Integrity Management Program. He was on the phone a couple of times providing an update to city staff, and so he's very knowledgeable about the project and about the specifics. So if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
We have a couple. Start with Matt.
If we could go back to Site 1. So I remember, so this is as we go from kind of right to left. To the left is up the hill, and to the right is going down towards the bay on Britain, correct?
Correct.
And I remember when work was done here, I think it was last summer, and I don't know if it was PG&E or what company was doing work there, and Jay can probably answer that question. But my concern is traffic, because this is a major artery for us, and especially in the morning, more than anything else, in the morning when people are trying to commute out of the city, this is a major way to do that. And
I drive that corner myself every day.
So if you could just address how we're going to manage morning traffic and your project at the same time.
We are prepared to submit full plans and traffic mitigation plans tomorrow morning, and that everything will be discussed through Public Works. And I personally right now don't have the specific details of the plans, but we're very much aware of the artery of Britain Avenue, and we'll be submitting those plans. We're pretty much ready to go tomorrow morning.
All right, thanks.
All right. Bob?
Mr. Chan, you mentioned the time frame again. This work that you're going to do on Britain and the work that you're going to do on Tasker Lane, is it going to be done concurrently?
Yes.
And you said it's going to start in early April?
The intention is to start right around the week of April 1st to begin the prep work and eventually the excavation. With work being done, we hope to be completed by the week of April 20th. Is that correct? April 20th, and so that will allow the resumption of the inline inspection runs for late April, early May.
Okay, so that was my second part of the question. So then once that work is done, then you can do we call it the pig, but whatever.
The pigging, yes.
The pigging, it can start again, or start, should I say start or resume? I'm not sure if you've done any of it before yet.
I'm using the term resume because we've done the geometry runs,
Okay.
which.
So anyway, you can resume that, and how long will that take?
I think the MFR runs would take about a week.
About a week, okay. So theoretically, by the end of May, say June 15th, because everything gets delayed in life. By June 15th, you'll have it done, and then it'll take a little bit of time to process the information to identify if there's any issues.
If everything falls into place according to expectations and schedules and whatnot, June 15th is realistic, and then it takes about 90 days for the data to be processed and for our vendors to give us that report, which we will share a report with the city.
So say before the end of the quarter, before September 30th, you'd have information to give back to the city that all the lines have integrity, no, there's some issues we're going to have to replace, or et cetera, et cetera.
That's the hopeful expectation, yes,
Sure.
if everything's according to
Theoretically
schedule.
by September, again, hopeful expectation by September 30th, we'll have all the information about that 4+ mile pipeline.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chan.
All right. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Chan. I'm very pleased that you guys are doing the inspection. I just was a little bit confused. So, we've been talking for a long time about how there are bends in the pipe and that some excavation. So these are bends that we weren't aware of. Is that the issue? That we've done some excavation work, we've done some smoothing of the line, and then these are some additional bends that need to be smoothed out? Or are these the...
No, we knew about the existence of the bends. We were aware of.
Right.
We just didn't expect the tools to have challenges moving through the bends in the lower than normal pressure environment for these tools.
Okay. I guess my broader question, maybe this is a question for staff too, is are we doing more work than we had been talking about 6 months ago?
Yes, PG&E had originally, before they even began the process, identified a couple areas where they knew they were going to have to make changes,
Right.
and they did that work.
That's what I thought.
Then they run a series of different devices through the line leading up to the pig, and one of those is really designed to test how the pig will perform when it goes through. And you can think of the pig, as it was explained to me, as kind of like a caterpillar device with a lot of different bodies. And in two areas, it had difficulty navigating the turns in the pipe, which caused the pressure to drop, which means then downstream the device speeds up and it compromises the quality of the data.
Okay. So the update is that there's some additional excavation and smoothing of the bends necessary to do the probe.
Correct. Correct, to make sure that the smart pig runs through
Okay.
properly and provides the proper amount of data.
Okay. And as of this moment, we have no data that suggests that there's anything that you found any problems with the pipe, right? You're still this is all preliminary work.
Correct.
So when you said we sent something down and it saw issues, that was not issues with the pipeline. It was issues with the ability for us to test the pipe.
It was the issue the issue is with the ability of the tools to pass properly through the pipe.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
All right. And the only question I had, Mr. Chang, was are there any other areas along Line 147 on either side that you're concerned about or that you may be wanting to test?
That I will defer to Mr. Jambier.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. The answer is at this point in time, no. So based on the geometry tool that we ran, that gives us a very good depiction of basically the ability of the smart pig that Bill was talking about to successfully navigate the line. And so as Bill mentioned, as Bill mentioned, when we ran the geometry pig through the line, that gave us a much better picture of, the likelihood of success for the final smart pig. So at this point in time, we believe pretty confidently that the two areas that we're talking about this evening should be the last areas that we need to replace prior to performing the final inspection tool.
All right. And then the other question I had sort of revolves around future integrity issues. If there's a line in the future that becomes compromised, do you know about it? Do you have some sort of remote sensing technology that can detect that there's an issue at some point along really any one of your lines in town, or any town for that matter?
So for issues like that, we really rely, on our integrity management program. So inline inspection is one of our key components of our integrity management program. So typically every 7 years, we would come back and we would reinspect all of our gas transmission pipelines that are located in high consequence areas. So obviously line 147 is one of those. So the idea being that once we perform our first inline inspection this year, that we would come back typically every 7 years and continue performing that to see if the condition of the pipeline has changed.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Oh, wait a minute. We have a...
So the actual construction work will be performed by PG&E, and then the actual inline inspection work is actually, PG&E supports it, but the ILI tools themselves are contractors.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay.
And of course, we will continue to keep this council and city staff updated all along the process.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next, we have our annual report on police services, and I see Chief Rothis is here.
Good evening, Mayor Collins, members of the City Council. Greg Rothis, Police Chief. I'm here before you tonight for the annual report on police services to the City Council. We do this once a year. And you have the staff report in front of you that outlines quite a few of the particulars, and I'm just going to highlight a few of those. Obviously, probably the most important and germane to the discussion is Part 1 crime rates and what's going on with crime in San Carlos. We use Part 1 crimes to measure crime in the community. It's not a measure of, it's not all crimes. It's just a few, but they do form a really good barometer, and it's something that's universally used. And those are the crimes, a list of the crimes that constitute Part 1 crimes. And what's gone on over the past 11 years in San Carlos has been, last time I was here before council, we had pretty much a flat trend line with respect to crimes. But in 2014, for whatever reason, we've had really one of, if not the lowest Part 1 crime rate that you can see, at least in that historical record. And I can't remember it being that low. And that's really driven a lot by larcenies, which is misdemeanor theft. And we're seeing that regionally. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why, but I'm glad that's the case at any rate. burglary is probably the most high-profile crime that we have in this community on a somewhat frequent basis. And, you know, what we saw is, you know, last year we had a lot of high-profile burglaries. We saw this year pretty much the same. There really wasn't much of a drop-off at all with respect to burglaries. I pointed out in the report that other communities haven't been that lucky. Some have seen a really appreciable increase in burglaries. We're holding steady, but you do see pretty clearly that we have an upward trend in that right now. In terms of how we are with burglaries, we take a look at how we sit vis-a-vis other communities of our size and character and makeup. And we've been doing this since 2005 in terms of measuring ourselves. And what we've been consistently finding is that Belmont and Redwood City has fewer burglaries than we do. Burlingame and Los Gatos has more. When that relationship comes out of whack somehow for some reason, and we end up having more than Burlingame or Los Gatos, we really need to figure out what's going on. But that relationship is held steady. So we're really holding steady versus what similar communities are going through. We have less than some, we have more than others. In terms of traffic accidents in the community, we've had some good news in that regard. We've had a reduction in our injury accidents, and we've had a reduction in overall accidents. And you know, that's some pretty good news. Interestingly enough, we've had an increase in DUI crashes, even though our DUI arrests have almost doubled last year. So I'm not really sure why that is, but we'll continue to enforce DUI, you know, strictly in this community. We take a look at in 2012, this council made a decision to invest in another traffic deputy for the community. And so you take a look at 2008 to 2011 and the trend line there, a flat trend as it relates to injury accidents. But then since the council's decision to add another motor, we've had a slight reduction in injury collisions through 2014, and now a decreasing trend line as it relates to accidents. So that's good news, and I'm sure can be attributed in large part to the decision on the council to invest in traffic safety and that second motor position. Community policing, we do quite a bit with the community other than fighting crime and responding to car accidents. And one of our biggest relationships and strongest relationships appears to really is with the schools. We do a lot with the schools in partnership with the school district. We do participate in their school drills. We've done cyber safety presentations for the kids in PTA. We do neighborhood watch presentations. Really, you'll probably, I'm sure, see us at all the community events of any size at all. We offer the Sheriff's Activities League for kids. We do a couple bike rodeos and the movie nights in the park, which are a lot of fun. That's actually Sheriff's Activities League equipment, and it's a lot of fun in the community. And so that's pretty much my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, Cameron.
Thank you, Greg.
You bet.
I wanted to first see if you could give us an update on the homemade bomb incident in Arguello Park this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we did a press release on that, and we're not going into too many details on the device because the only person that knows the particulars of the device is the person who made it, and so we don't really go into too much details, except to say that it was this crude homemade device. There wasn't anything particularly sophisticated about the way it was made, and it was left along in the park hillside in a hole, and fortunately, it didn't go off. The bomb squad did respond to pick it up, and it is being processed for any kind of evidence that might be on that, on any piece of that, you know. And so we're going to be taking a hard look at that. And other than that, right now, it's very new, and that's all we have at this point.
Okay. Thanks. Different topic, automated license plate readers. I know the council approved purchasing some automated license plate readers. Could you give us a update on, have you purchased them? Are you planning to purchase them? When will they go in the field?
We have one. We have the mobile already, and that will be deployed pretty soon. We've selected the car to put it in, and I think I would expect to see that out within the next 30 days or so. Mm-hmm. And then with respect to the fixed one, not yet. That's going to take a little bit longer to get going.
Okay. Well, I'm very interested to see how that goes, and yeah, I think we all are. last question for the moment. So big topic last year was armed robberies. I believe there was armed robbery at Trader Joe's, another one at Baja Fresh. Can you give us your thoughts on, is that, continue to be a threat? Has the threat lessened? What's generally sort of the law enforcement view of the likelihood of further armed robberies in San Carlos?
I'd be happy to do that. First of all, we had, I don't know, maybe a dozen robberies last year, but not all of them are armed. Probably less than half involve a weapon. The others, like if somebody's, for example, trying to get away at a liquor store, they stole the six-pack and they're trying to run away, and the clerk tries to grab them and they push the clerk away, that's a robbery because you use force to complete it. So some of them involve weapons. Unfortunately, right now, the Baja Fresh robbery is not solved. The Trader Joe's robbery is not solved. And so that's, like I said, about half of them don't involve weapons. And it's really hard to say, but what I can tell you, despite the fact that that was probably one of our highest robbery rates we've ever had, I've taken a look at Bay Area robbery rates, and ours are so low in comparison to what we see in other communities. But in terms of predicting next year, it's really hard to say. I wouldn't have predicted, given prison realignment, given a lot of stuff that's been happening with respect to sentencing and all of that, to see such a sharp drop off in larcenies last year. And so it's very hard to predict what might happen next year.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
Okay, Bob?
Chief, on the DUIs, do you have any statistics that indicate how many of those are residents versus people just driving through?
We absolutely do. I don't have them here, but I can certainly get that information to you. We can absolutely get that.
Would you have just an intuitive feel for? I mean, you don't need to. And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I don't. Okay. But if I had to guess, I'd say maybe half.
Okay. Like I said, but it's not like when you have a DUI. You mentioned DUIs. It just happens to happen in San Carlos.
Correct.
In other words,
the rest is in San Carlos. The rest
is in San Carlos. There's a lot of people going through and
sure. I mean, we'll get them. We'll get the rest on El Camino, or people going to and from home. But we do get residents, as well, and they typically we get a lot of people trying to take back streets home when they've been drinking, but they don't realize that we've already figured that out. So there's really no safe street if you're going to do
problem.
that.
I thought you might have it, but like I said, the main point I was trying to make, and I think you've made it anyway, is not every DUI is a resident of San Carlos. So, okay, thank you, Chief.
All right, Matt.
First question I have is perhaps using Cameron's first example as the example. Anything that is remarkably different in how we can process a crime like that and perhaps solve it versus, now under the sheriff's contract versus how we might have done it when we were our own police department?
No, actually, Councilmember Grocott, not really, because had that happened when we were police department, we would have called the sheriff's office bomb squad, and they would have handled that in much the same way we just did, because we didn't have a bomb squad. The police department did not have that. So the sheriff's office provides certain services that some of the larger police, some of the smaller agencies don't have. For example, it could be the bomb squad, it could be the SWAT team, and some of these things. So we would still get that asset.
So other than the cost savings, is there anything we are seeing in terms of, how we do business in policing that's, better or worse because we're with the sheriff's department?
Well, I think, one of the things that we do to make sure we're doing good, we take a look at all the metrics that I've obviously outlined in the report in terms of, is our crimes increasing, and they're not, they're actually decreasing. I don't attribute that to the sheriff's office. It's just, it's a fortunate statistic. We take a look at, we do the qualitative analysis with the surveys. We do these citizen satisfaction surveys out to the community, and they continue to come back, with very high marks about us. Our emergency response times are under 5 minutes, and sometimes even under 4 minutes for given 6-month time periods. And so, all of that seems to be rolling, very well in terms of our agency. And we're doing all that when, in fact, the city's now spending per capita spending I looked at Belmont's police budget the other day. It was something like $10 million. Ours is $7 million with dispatch. We're spending far less than other communities. We're just as safe, if not safer, than we were before. Response times are there. Community's happy. And I think everything seems to be going well.
And last question, just anything in terms of access to the department regarding, again, under the new under this contract and the way we're operating?
You know, the only thing that happened is there were some people who felt like we didn't have an office here anymore, so they didn't come here. They thought the police department was gone. Mm-hmm. But our access is still here. We've always still had this, as you know, we called it the sheriff's substation here. We've still had the presence. It's just that people thought we were gone. I think they've figured out that we're still here. But every once in a while, I'll get a remark from somebody that you don't have a police office in San Carlos. Well, yeah, we know we still do. Mm-hmm. So,
okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. The only question I had, Greg, was, I was watching this, it seemed like the Part 1 crimes overall tended to trend downward. But then when you look at the burglaries, there's a tiny trend upward. And my question is, do burglaries tend to follow economic cycles? Do they get worse in good times or better in good times? Seems like we're in a really good economic time now, and now we've got burglaries. Or is that just not related?
I think there's a relationship, but there's a relationship to so many other things. We found out, for example, a lot of our burglaries were they're gangs. We had a lot of gangs operating in South County who were coming up here and doing a lot of burglaries. So ours weren't economic as much, and they were driven by maybe a need for greater and stronger gang enforcement. We have the gang task force. We're out there doing a lot of stuff. But there's so many things that can affect it, and many criminologists have tied crime rates to the economy. But I bet if you go back and check models, you can see that somehow that's not always holding true.
Right.
So.
Okay. Last thing was, I understand there was a robbery at Home Depot recently, and that seemed like a pretty violent thing. I mean, the guy, I thought, foolishly followed him in his car. Any new developments on that?
We have all the suspects identified. I believe 1 is in custody, 2 have warrants. And so the good news on that is everybody's going to jail. And it was pretty scary and very rare for somebody to actually get held up with a firearm in a parking lot of Home Depot, and then for the victim to follow them. And then, as you probably heard, the suspect shot at the victim's car in Redwood City, and but we were fortunately able to capture him. And we've had this community has had those types of crimes ever since all of us here became affiliated with it, and we lived here. It's not new. It is rare, but I always tell people, but it does happen here, Yeah.
Well, thank you for the update on that. It sounds like we're going to have a good outcome.
Yeah, we are from that one. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
you.
All
right. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Okay. Where are we? We're moving on to a study session. Item 9A. Report on city regulation of taxi cabs and internet-based transportation companies.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, this item came out of the last strategic plan, the ones from 6 months ago, to investigate how the city could encourage internet-based transportation companies to operate in San Carlos, and to explore how we could potentially regulate those types of services. As part of my investigation, I discovered that the state has been busy passing laws, and the CPUC has issued regulations, some of which now, from recent news reports, are in conflict. The 2 state agencies are in conflict over how existing laws in the Vehicle Code and the Public Utilities Code affect these types of companies. So, for example, the CPUC regulations and the recently enacted state law seem to allow personal vehicles to be used for these types of companies, where the DMV has decided that these types of vehicles being used for transportation purposes. It doesn't matter that they're internet-based, that they got commercial plates are required for these service to provide services like this. So right now, the current situation is the state has two agencies that have conflicting regulations that could affect how these transportation companies operate. Right now, the status quo is the CPUC regulations, and the DMV's proposal is has not yet been implemented. But as you can see from my report, given the flux on this, our options probably are limited. There's an issue of preemption. How far do the CPUC regulations extend in this area, and what is left for a local agency like San Carlos to regulate? And then we have the issue of what we clearly have rights to regulate is our public rights of way and parking and things like that. So we could develop parking zones that would encourage, for example, the use of these types of services. Maybe it's waiting areas for people who are the drivers to wait for rides to post, and then they can go pick up people. We could allow some limited parking areas in the downtown that might allow these vehicles to be there to, apropos to the chief's prior report, to maybe there's people who had too much to drink and they would like to have the availability of these types of vehicles. Those are the types of things we could encourage through our existing protocol that would not conflict with the overall regulation by the CPUC. But as far as regulating the actual services, our options appear to be limited. So that's the end of my report. I can answer any other questions. As you can see, the CPUC regulations are pretty thorough about insurance and background checks and public safety issues.
All right. Any questions of Greg? I think I only had one, and that was, you've got the CPU issuing regulations, and you got the DMV issuing regulations, and I think you just said they haven't been implemented yet. Is there at some point where the state legislature just steps in and sort of takes over and settles this?
Yeah, the news article from the Sacramento Bee, which has been tracking this, seems to indicate that that's a possibility, that the legislature will step in and basically explicitly say that vehicles who are internet transportation company vehicles or drivers will not require commercial plates. I mean, that is a possibility.
All right. So we're pretty much wait and see mode.
I think we should wait and see. And then the other part is direction from the council. Would you like us to study some of these other more passive ways to regulate these types of companies that might encourage them to come to San Carlos, for example? But I think the scope of it would be probably parking regulations. That's how we could probably encourage them.
Is that something that we should still wait to see what the state does, or something that we can be sort of pursuing in advance to have them in place and ready?
I do not believe we would have to wait for the state on those types of regulations, but I think we would have to, using the Public Works Director and the city engineer and his staff, figure out where those types of locations might be if the council wants to provide that direction. And we would, of course, need to bring it back, any kind of regulation. And now the Public Works Director has some authority to stripe curbs and things of that nature without coming back to the council. But I think overall we would need your direction to in order to start that process.
All right. Cameron, you had a question?
I was just going to make a comment. I mean, overall, I completely agree with Greg. I mean, there's 20 cities in San Mateo County. We can't all individually be regulating these companies at a time when there's so much flux. I would say I have taken Uber in San Carlos once, and it's not a big market. So, I mean, the nice thing about Uber is when you open up the app, it will tell you where the cars are. So as we sit here right now, there are 3 Uber cars in San Carlos. There's 1 in Belmont. There's 4 in Foster City. So I don't think we need a parking lot for them right now. I think it's a pretty small market. That being said, I am interested just generally. We've had issues with taxi cabs loitering next to the train station and other things like that. So I think, as it's going to grow. I don't think it's going to be huge, but it will grow. And as it does grow, I think we need to have some enforcement issues about, cars idling where they shouldn't be. But I agree with you that this is definitely a wait and see. I think Airbnb falls in the same category. There are many other sort of new forms of, the sort of sharing economy that affect us and have impacts on the community. But I don't think we should be independently regulating them right now.
Any desire on the part of council to give further direction at this point? Not feeling it. Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. All right. Let's see. Since this is a study session, I believe, is there any member of the public that would like to make any comment on this? There's only one member of the public that I can see here. Nothing you want to say. All right. Moving along to new business, 10A, consideration of adopting a resolution adopting this City of San Carlos strategic plan and 6-month objective matrix.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm pinch hitting on this presentation this evening. Make sure it's on.
I know it's on the side now.
It's on. There we go, and it works. Okay, recently the City Council and staff held, I believe it was the 19th strategic planning retreat over at the library, which is, those strategic planning retreats are open to the public, and we've always had at least 1 or 2 members of the public attend our retreat to go through our accomplishments, look at our mission statement, vision statement, those things which you'll see in just a moment. We do a SWOT analysis looking for strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that are occurring in and around the city of San Carlos. And does anybody remember how many accomplishments we had? 80. Bob gets the prize.
What do I win?
You get to leave early tonight.
Okay.
So the city's mission statement, the City of San Carlos provides high-quality services and facilities in a fiscally sustainable, responsive, and friendly manner to foster a safe and healthy community. And I think that mission statement definitely reflects what I know about the City of San Carlos. Our vision statement, by 2017, San Carlos will be a vibrant, family, and business-friendly community, admired as a great place to live, learn, work, and play. And again, I think that vision statement definitely mirrors the values of our community here. A summary of the 10-year targets and elements that help define our vision. The council has had an interest in looking at different ways to coordinate shuttle and public transportation services, including Uber and Lyft, which we just talked about a few moments ago. Created development on El Camino to include public parking and housing, including affordable housing and retail components. And staff continues to explore those opportunities. Make most government services available online. This is something that we've been working on for the past 10 or 12 years, and I'm sure we'll continue to chase online services long into the future. But we have a number of initiatives that are moving forward to help expand the availability and usability of our online services to our customers. Purchase Black Mountain property, which has been a significant initiative in 2015 of the City Council in exploring the possibility of putting a bond measure before voters potentially as early as November of 2015. Create traditional and non-traditional park and recreation facilities, including skate parks, dog parks, aquatic parks, those types of things. We're exploring all those opportunities. Aquatic center, and create more office space. So these were the 10-year targets from the last go-around. Our core values, which remained unchanged, include fiscal responsibility and sustainability, protecting our environment, strategic thinking and planning for the future, high ethical standards, community involvement and engagement, high quality customer service, and a strong sense of community and, of course, public safety. Our 3-year goals, which also remain unchanged, are to enhance the community vitality, cohesion, and engagement. Means we want as many people from San Carlos to participate in our public process as we possibly can. And fortunately, we have one member of the community holding up the banner here tonight. Provide effective and sustainable community health and public safety, an area where the council spends the lion's share of our public dollars. Enhance and sustain facilities, infrastructure, and technology. Enhance economic development, and plan for and implement fiscal sustainability. Previous 6-month objectives during the last go-around included hiring consultants to assist with the preparation for a potential bond measure, establishing City Hall Park as an off-leash dog park, introduced an ordinance concerning water use restrictions on the drought emergency that the council's declared here in San Carlos. We facilitated a volunteer summit, introduced Shape San Carlos, a community engagement tool, presented design options to the council for the ACC remodel project, and awarded construction, provided council with a report on the state of the streets, trained staff on emergency operations and procedures, and improve automated license plate readers. We also, presenting zoning code updates to the city council, held a community meeting about Wheeler Plaza, and presented a 20-year long-term integrated financial plan to the council. Moving forward, the 10-year objectives include, in the new version of the report, to coordinate shuttle services. There are 2 objectives related to that in the draft that the staff has prepared for council tonight. Create and develop an El Camino and Laurel Street development project. There are 5 objectives related to that. Make most government services available online. There are 2 objectives related to that. Create traditional and non-traditional parks and recreation facilities has 2 new objectives. Purchase Black Mountain property has 4 objectives, and creating more office space, 2 objectives. Our 3-year goals, enhance community vitality and cohesion and engagement, have 9 new objectives in this plan. Provide effective and sustainable community health and public safety, 9 objectives. Plan for and implement financial sustainability, 6 new objectives. Enhance and sustain facilities, infrastructure, and technology, 15 new objectives. Enhance economic development has 11 new objectives. All totaled, there's about just under 70 new objectives in the strategic plan before you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have, and we have plenty of staff here as well to help out.
Well, nobody's rushing to ask any questions. Of course, we just had this meeting a couple of weeks ago.
We just had this meeting a couple of weeks ago, and as the council knows, as in the past, the strategic plan will be back before you once a month for the next 6 months until we develop a new one.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So Jeff, at the end of the strategic planning meeting, there was some sort of constructive feedback about how to potentially improve the process. Can you talk a little bit about what do we do differently next time? Is there going to be an opportunity to give feedback and think about how to make it a little bit more effective?
Sure. We're going to talk a little bit more at the staff level about some of the different ideas. And I'll be speaking, I think, with you all on and off over the next couple months before we really get in the mode of starting to plan it. There's been a lot of differing opinions amongst staff, city managers, council members over the last 10 years that we've had this process about how we might improve it or change it. It's not exactly the same process that we had 10 years ago. It's very similar. I've been giving some thought as to whether or not it's time to go out and do an RFP and look at other consultants and other processes to bring forward to the council for potential consideration. It's imperfect. We sort of get complaints every time, no matter how we do it.
I think the output is good. I would be open to looking at some fresh blood. So,
all right. Anybody else? Questions?
Motion.
Well, I think we need to ask if there's any public comment first. No member of the public wishing to speak? All right. I think we're probably ready for a motion now.
I move to adopt Resolution 2015-25,
25.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adopting the City of San Carlos strategic plan and 6-month objective matrix.
I second.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Crystal?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. Item 10B, consideration of adopting a resolution declaring that there is a need for a housing authority to function in the city and declaring that the members of the city council shall be the commissioners of the housing authority. Mr. Savay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The creation and funding of affordable housing in most cities was historically handled through the redevelopment agency. And with the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies in the state of California, the city, we believe would benefit from a new entity with a mission and focus to continue advancing affordable housing projects to benefit low-income residents and seniors in our community. The entity that's recommended is a local housing authority. And as funding for affordable housing projects becomes increasingly difficult and competitive to secure, more cities are looking for these kinds of alternate strategies to backfill the funding gap that was once filled by our redevelopment agencies and in our low and moderate housing funds. And the state allowed us to keep those housing funds. That's the good news. And this entity would help you to provide you with more flexibility in how you went about creating affordable housing with those housing funds. The establishment of San Carlos Housing Authority would provide you with a new focus and give the city the ability to attract and secure federal grant funds as well for the creation of new affordable housing projects. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over to our Economic Development Coordinator, Sam Hughes. He's going to give you some discussion about how the authority works, what the benefits are, and then we'll be available to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Al. Mayor, council members, Sam Hughes, Economic Development Manager here with the city. And as Mr. Savay has already indicated, staff believes it's in the interest of the city to move forward in establishing a housing authority. Essentially, the mission will be, it's a mission-driven focus, focused on providing affordable housing to residents of the city of San Carlos. It's an alternative entity to the former redevelopment agency, and certainly it's a special purpose entity to secure funding sources. Many would ask, well, what is a housing authority? It's an autonomous not-for-profit corporation under local control, subject to California Housing Authority's law. Essentially organized to develop long-term housing strategies to assist income-eligible families and seniors get the much-needed housing that they want. As Al has already indicated, in years past, the redevelopment agency has essentially facilitated developments here in the city of San Carlos, not the least of all is the Loyola Oaks apartment building, the Elms, and certainly what we're hoping to happen here in Wheeler Plaza, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But in short, the benefits of a housing authority are to help provide affordable housing, eliminate overcrowding, and certainly there is some eligibility for federal funding, and it allows for flexible negotiating strategies with property owners, particularly those astute property owners that realize that there are some advantages in having a certain type of entity acquire their properties. And certainly there are property tax advantages as well as exchange period advantages. Earlier I mentioned Wheeler Plaza, hopefully to be developed clearly soon. And just to the right there, you'll see a proposed development that we're looking to have. And staff believes that in having a housing authority, we might be able to facilitate getting additional funds to the nonprofit that might ultimately develop that site. And so staff really wants to stress that the authority is not to develop the property per se, as it is to facilitate developments of affordable housing here in the city of San Carlos. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have, and I'm available for you.
Okay, Cameron.
Thanks very much. So it looks like from the staff report, we have $2 million in a housing fund that we would put into the housing authority. And then we anticipate an additional $3.5 million that would come out of Wheeler Plaza. So we'd have $5.5 million as a starting point. Is that accurate?
Well, in terms of capitalizing the authority, I don't necessarily want to speak to that. I really want to stress just setting up that tool and having it available for the city. There are certainly some findings that legal needs to make with respect to the transfer of funds, et cetera. But certainly there are dollars readily available for affordable housing. $3.5 million or so will be provided to the city in lieu of providing BMR units at the Wheeler site. And quite honestly, many developers are opting to do just that. They're opting to provide, they're opting to pay the housing in lieu fee, as opposed to providing the much needed BMR units that are required. So again, with respect to the transfer of funds, Councilman, I really am not in a position to speak to that. And Council, if you may sort of chime in on that, Greg.
Okay, I thought that's what it said in the staff memo.
I think what Sam is talking about is that it'll require a separate action by the council at a future meeting. Tonight's just setting up the authority.
I see. Okay. But is it the intention to transfer the housing and lieu funds into the housing authority?
Our intention is to leverage the funds we have for low and moderate income housing in any way we can. And so it's likely that if a project materializes that we would, if it was beneficial to the city and the authority, to transfer those dollars to a project.
Okay, but I guess the question is, this is not then a replacement for our housing in lieu program or our housing fund. It would operate.
No, it's not a replacement.
This is a vehicle.
Yeah, in many ways, it's a vehicle. It's a tool, something to add, to our belt, if you will, to facilitate the developments that are all too necessary.
Okay, and then it predates me, but my understanding from redevelopment is redevelopment did carry a substantial balance. And redevelopment also paid staff. There were staff people that were being paid out of redevelopment. Would the housing authority have staff, and are the projects that can be paid out of the housing authority specifically, kind of capital construction, or are there kind of ongoing operations that come out of the housing authority budget as well?
As anticipated right now, the administrative cost to run or facilitate the authority is not exhaustive in any way stretch the imagination, but certainly the resources that are available in the low moderate income housing asset fund would be available to sort of backfill any administrative costs that might arise.
Okay, so we wouldn't have employees that are working for the housing authority, like they're
not per se.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Thank you. I know there was not a lot of specificity in the answers, but I'll take it.
You won't have any new employees. It'll be the same staff. It's the same organization.
All right. I don't see any other lights on, but I've got some questions. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Matt, you do. I apologize. Go ahead.
You didn't miss it. Yeah. A couple questions going through the actual resolution. So it says here that there's two reasons that an agency, a government body, would do this. And one of them is that finding that insanitary or unsafe inhabited dwelling accommodations exist in the city. That's A. Or B, that there is a shortage of safe or sanitary dwelling accommodations in the city available to persons of low income at rentals they can afford. So if we've done any, we're being asked to take an action, is there any backup material on those two items?
Well, in this particular instance, we're selecting sort of option B, if you will, and with respect to statistical information to support that there is the need for the quality housing. Our housing element outlines our RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and clearly there is a need for housing, affordable housing, that is certainly quality, clean, and affordable to those that otherwise couldn't afford it. All of which is outlined in the housing
the RHNA
element.
was done by whom?
The regional housing needs assessment. Essentially, the city of San Carlos is a member of the 21 elements, and essentially, who are cities within here in the county of San Mateo, and essentially housing needs are sort of determined throughout the county, and each city has to step up to be willing to provide a certain number of housing units for
I'm
people.
aware of that, but I'm saying the RHNA numbers, the way that those were arrived at for the city of San Carlos.
Could I interject? I think we're getting off the beaten path. You asked a question of where the statistics or the facts were that there are that we need low income housing, or we need some help. Is that what your question was? I believe.
The question is, so Sam here is saying that did I get your name right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I thought I heard somebody say I didn't get the name right. Sorry, Sam. He's saying we're focusing on B.
Right.
And B is, trying to find it again, that there is a shortage of safe or sanitary dwelling accommodations in the city available to persons of low income at rentals they can afford. Mm-hmm. So,
and you wanted to know the statistical basis for why you think it should be B.
Right.
Are there numbers? Are there data? Is there data?
Is there data? Right. Yes.
So, I mean, go ahead.
It's within the housing element.
Yeah.
That's within the housing element, which is a document that's been presented to this dais. In fact, it's with the state of California right now, and soon to return to council for its approval. Within that document, Councilman, there's information that supports the need for housing.
Where did that information come from?
With respect to determining the need?
For San Carlos specifically, yes.
And an assessment was done of the real property here in the city, particularly with respect to affordable housing units that are readily available to people that might not otherwise qualify for them. And it was quantified, and those numbers are reflected in the housing element.
So that was done by our city staff?
And a consultant, an outside consultant. Driscoll and Barrett, I believe. Yeah.
The other question I had is the California law talks about, going to the top here, California Housing Authority law provides that in every city, public body, so forth, known as the Housing Authority. And so my question is, if after discussion here on the dais, if we had any problem with that title, that wording of authority, and we wanted to change it to something else, either agency or something a little more soft and approachable, could we do that?
Greg might want to chime in with respect to the naming of this, dare I say, authority.
Those are the only questions I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe while Greg looks, you're done with your questions?
Yeah. I'm done.
Okay. Well, if you think of anything else, just come back. Okay. Thank you, Sam. Just a couple things. It sounds to me like having our own housing authority or agency or whatever we end up calling it, it gives us a lot more control. Is that right?
Certainly.
Over a lot of these decisions?
Yes, control and flexibility. I really want to stress just the flexibility of having this tool at our disposal, not only to potentially acquire properties, but also to access certain dollars to leverage what we might already have in our piggy bank.
Are there things that we could do as a housing authority that we couldn't do under the RDA?
Well, specifically, it's accessing certain federal dollars. And let me
That was going
speak
to be one of my next questions. I want to explore that a little bit.
Yeah, to the extent that we can leverage the authority to the benefit of nonprofit housing developers, I think that it's definitely in our interest, it's in the city's interest to move ahead in that regard. Specifically, there are certain federal dollars that only housing authorities, tribes, and nonprofits that are essentially able to tap into certain funds. And even the nonprofit organizations that tap into the dollars must have the blessing of a housing authority. They cannot arbitrarily on their own apply. They must have a housing authority to essentially bless their application. Needs to be a co-applicant. So hypothetically speaking, if we have a nonprofit housing developer that seeks to develop a development, he seeks to develop a property here in the city, and they want to tap into certain federal funds, we can be a co-applicant with that nonprofit housing developer that would enable them to tap into dollars to backfill the development that they otherwise would not be able to get. So that's a very clear and precise example of an authority's power and how they can work with a developer, particularly a nonprofit housing developer, to bring about a development that otherwise would not happen.
Okay, well, that's good to know. On the whole federal funding or availability, I guess is probably what it's all about. Is it a formula that if we put up X million, that they put up a percentage of that, or is it on a project by project basis?
Project by project, and it is competitive. And there are different types of funding. Staff has not exhausted all of the funding that's readily available, but these are some of the things that we're going to be moving towards exercising for the benefit of the city. And it's certainly in order to advance the overall mission of the city, in part, which is to provide affordable housing.
Okay, and I don't want to anticipate what Greg's going to tell me, but the only reason that I could see what we'd want to call it a housing authority is that the federal government might not recognize us if we called ourselves something else. So, were you able to find anything, Greg?
I'm looking at the Health and Safety Code, Section 34240, that describes the where there is such a public body, corporate and politic, known as the housing authority of the county or city. So I think there probably is some flexibility in the naming, but I think I agree that housing authority should probably be in the title because of the way the legislation's written. But I think doing it off the top here and not completely knowing the history of this law and some of these implications, I would say if there's a desire to call the housing authority something else, that we could bring it back, and that could simply be done by resolution complementing this one at a future date.
Okay. And my last question was, does this put us in a better position to approach property owners for potential alternative uses for their properties that they may not have thought of? You understand what I'm saying? That, under the RDA, there was, I suppose, a certain set of rules, but I'm just wondering now, you outlined some things that talked about some certain tax advantages to owners. And I'm wondering, is there owners that we could go to that would say, by the way, if you're interested, there are certain tax benefits to you for participating in this type of a program?
Well, let me be real clear. In terms of a program, the tax advantages that are alluded to within the staff report are specific to a certain type of acquisition strategy that the authority can exercise. In the event the authority opts to exercise this particular purchase strategy, a landowner has a couple of options available to them. One is, customarily in a 1031 exchange, a landowner has 180 days to identify another property and purchase it. Under a different type of mechanism, namely a 1033 exchange, they have upwards of 3 years to identify that replacement property. That is a huge benefit to many, many landowners, particularly those that are savvy. Secondly, and the biggest, I believe, is maintaining the tax base. If someone has purchased their property several years ago, 1975, and their tax base today is $9,500, and they sell that property for $3 million and look to exchange into something else, where their new property tax base will be about $38,000 or $40,000. Under a particular type of acquisition, the property owner is able to maintain their existing tax base. Those are two huge benefits, particularly to savvy property sellers that might look favorable upon an authority potentially buying their property.
Okay, thank you. Matt, you had another question?
Yeah, just one other question. These items that you're telling us that we could do with the authority, any of them that we could do without the authority, just as a, city council?
Yes. The city cannot necessarily acquire property, for example, through eminent domain for the purpose of developing public housing or any type of housing. The city is precluded from that. An authority, a housing authority, is able to exercise that power of eminent domain to acquire property for the purpose of developing housing. So that's a very clear example and distinction between the two.
Sorry, I went to the web there and some noise came out. The reason I went to the web is I had a page up regarding the California law on housing under the California Constitution. And then it talks about when you do public housing for low income, that those projects have to go to the voters. Would these kind of projects have to go to the voters then?
To my knowledge, no. And you bring up a point, particularly with respect to the board composition, if you will, of an authority. If an authority has more than 300 housing units, they're subject to having members of the public on that board to govern the activities of that board. If it's more than 300 units, certainly here in San Carlos, that's not the case, and I don't believe it would be the case for any authority that's set up. Because it's not the case, this dais, the council, would be the controlling agent, if you will, for the authority to do whatever activities it chooses to do and not be subject to what you mentioned earlier.
Follow-up question. Why is it that a housing authority is allowed to use eminent domain to buy property for the purpose of housing? And did you say public housing or low-income housing? Does it have to be a 100% low-income housing project at that point? Or, and let me just spit out all my questions and then you can address them. Or can it be like what we've done in the past where we do inclusionary, right? And so you're saying as a city, we can't do eminent domain for that purpose. Why is it that a housing authority can and does it? And so why is it that a housing authority can and a city cannot, if you know? And then the mix, does it have to be 100% affordable housing like the one we did at the end of, was it East San Carlos Avenue? Or can it be an inclusionary project?
With respect to why a city cannot acquire buildings for the purpose of housing vis-a-vis eminent domain, I'll definitely defer to Greg. I don't know why that's the case, but I know that they cannot. With respect to what I believe is the question of 100% affordability versus a partial affordability, I really got to harken back to what I mentioned earlier, which in many regard is the authority. I believe the way in which we're contemplating it is not necessarily going to develop the property and own it outright indefinitely with a fee simple ownership, but rather facilitate developments. And there are certain dollars that, because the agency would be involved, would have access to, and these particular pots of dollars allow for mixed income developments whereby a portion of development can be affordable and the balance can be market rate. Greg, if you will, if you want to comment regarding the distinction between the city moving on a matter versus an authority.
Well, the way I'm reading these health and safety code sections about housing authority is that the housing authority is a separate entity than the city when you establish it, even though the council would act as the members of the board of the body. And there are a list of powers that are listed in the code section, and frankly, I have not had a chance to study all of it. I was looking at this, and the if there is a separate, I'm just looking at, it has the power to sue and be sued, which it probably comes under that power. It has the power to make and execute contracts and other instruments necessary or convenient to the exercise of its powers. So I think together some of those separate authorities that are in the Health and Safety Code might make a distinguishing fact between the city and the constitutional provisions preventing a city from acquiring property for the purpose of giving the property to another person. That's the constitutional provision I think you're talking about. But the authority has the ability to purchase property and then hold the property. It's not necessarily purchasing property to give it to somebody else. So that would be my guess about why there's an eminent domain authority to acquire housing, whereas with a city, there might not be a public purpose attached to that. That would be the distinction I'm gathering. But frankly, I would, in order to give you a report on that very specific question, I would need to do a little more research and report back to you, and perhaps even consult with the our special counsel that's handling this issue.
Thank you.
If I may, Matt, one of the things that attracted this to me, and I'm going to read this because this is straight out of the staff report. With respect, does it have to be 100% low income? It says one strategy to attract federal funds is to establish an authority. An authority is eligible to apply for federal quality housing and Work Responsibility Act funds that provide for self-sufficiency programs and possess the authority to develop mixed finance units, which may include projects containing some public housing units with non-assisted market rate units. That's what had an impact on me, is that it's not, we're not setting up, tenement housing. We're setting up an authority that is going to allow for a greater ability to develop mixed use housing. Do I have that part of it right?
Mixed income housing, yes.
Mixed income.
Yes, Mayor. Yes.
All right. So it's not that we're going to develop all low income. It could be all levels of income. Correct?
Correct.
Including some market rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Could there be a mixed, we call it, a mixed use here, where we have commercial, office commercial on one level and housing on another level. Is that precluded by a housing authority?
That is not precluded. Oftentimes, the segregation of money, if you will, comes in the fold with respect to tax credits and affordable housing tax credits, and how those dollars need to be allocated on a particular development project. In the hypothetical of a mixed-use development, essentially, if 80% of the development is residential and 20% is mixed use, or strike that, 20% is commercial, commercial retail, for example, none of the federally subsidized dollars can go towards the retail portion. Right. It has to be contributed 100% to the residential components.
Right. Which would make it, would seem to me, the affordable component of it more doable.
Exactly. That in many ways, that's the magic, if you will, behind this type of soft money, potential soft money. It's to subsidize what otherwise would not pencil out and allow for below market rate units to be made available to folks, because the developer, it just wouldn't pencil out and they wouldn't build it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Matt, I apologize. I didn't mean to sort of steal your question period here. All right. So you're
done.
All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Cameron.
I move to adopt Resolution 2015-26,
26.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos declaring that there is a need for a housing authority to function in the city, and declaring that members of the City Council shall be commissioners of the housing authority.
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. And before we vote, I think Greg's light was on. He wanted to maybe give us a little bit more information.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Well, as I was looking through the code, on the point of eminent domain, the Health and Safety Code section 34,315 has a very explicit statement. Authority may acquire any real property by eminent domain. So it's right in the Health and Safety Code as an express authority.
right. Thank you.
Clarify that before.
Thanks, Greg. Some discussion before we vote. Matt?
Well, I'm troubled with this on a couple of levels. One is this idea that I just found out tonight. I mean, I just realized from Sam's report that he gave about the issue of eminent domain, and it helps me to understand perhaps why it's called an authority, because eminent domain is not something we have exercised very much as a city. Of course, if we did it, it would be for something like, put in a police station or a fire station or some type of public facility, obviously. As the RDA, if my memory serves me correctly, we didn't have eminent domain authority powers with our RDA. So suddenly we'd be creating something in San Carlos that would have that kind of authority. And that, to me, when you consider a person's property rights and so forth, that's pretty powerful. And I do not like the idea of the city having something that can exercise that type of authority other than for, obviously, the public good, being, a public facility of some kind, say a sewer line or a public building and those kinds of things that most people understand public domain being used for. The second reason is because what I'm hearing also is principally the reason to do this is to go after federal funding. And, I know my Constitution pretty well. And there's nothing in the Constitution that ever gave authority to the federal government to even have a HUD or anything like it. And that's what the Constitution is for. The Constitution is really a contract between the citizens, the people of America, and its government, and telling the government, this is what you can do, and this is what you can't do. And just like, we stay with local issues. This is kind of tempting in a way, Sam, because as you said, it gives us local authority in the realm of housing. But, we stay with local issues. And, we do things like some of the things we did earlier tonight. But on the other hand, we don't negotiate treaties with France or Great Britain or declare war with other nations because we're a city, we're a local government. In the same way, the federal government is supposed to stay in bounds with what's in the Constitution. And primarily, the Constitution sets up the federal government to deal with what are considered external affairs, meaning treaties, declaring war, etc. Read your Constitution. It's very clear. And by the way, I also, over the weekend, because I knew we were going to be looking at this, I thought, someone might come back with this idea of, well, there's the general welfare clause in the Constitution. So I went back and I read Federalist 41, written by James Madison. And in it, he talks about the general welfare clause. And he said, and because the anti-federalists were very concerned about that phraseology. And Madison's argument back was, look, the general welfare clause was in the Articles of Confederation as well. And it was never abused, never used to do anything other than external affairs as a confederation. So why would it be a problem in the future? And then he goes on and he says, anytime you make a general statement, but then you give specifics, you don't worry about the general statement. And that's exactly what we've done in the Constitution, is we've made a general statement, and then we've outlined the specifics. The specifics, again, being all these external affairs, some internal things like coining of money and regulation of trade between states and so forth. But our federal government is way out of bounds. And I'm sitting here as one council member, one of 20 cities in San Mateo County. If you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's like I'm sitting here with a pea shooter trying to fight against this issue. But fight I will, because I did raise my right hand and swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, and I will do so any chance I get.
Thanks, Matt. Cameron?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly respond. Matt, you said we deal with local issues, and I think there's nothing more local than where you live. And I disagree. I don't see this as an ideological issue. We have an issue in the Bay Area right now where Tens of thousands of people are moving here every year to pursue the American dream, and we have an issue where they don't have enough places to live, and the people who've lived here for a long time are getting displaced because they can't afford it. I think this is a totally reasonable, pragmatic stance that the city is taking to try and address this problem in the ways that it can, and I support it.
All right. Thank you. Bob, you had yours on and then off. And,
No, I just
okay.
question. I'm ready to roll.
You know, actually, it might have been mine.
Yeah, I think it's yours,
Sorry.
'cause I didn't have mine on.
Matt?
Not that we're going to have a lot of back and forth here or convince anybody of anything, but to Cameron's point, one issue that I also that I failed to state, and that is, regardless of whether it's federal, state, or local, the difficulty with government getting itself involved in creating housing to any degree, whether it's affordable or market rate or whatever, is, especially when it comes to the affordability issue, it's what I call a lottery, because you can't do it for everybody. And so certain individuals apply and they qualify by their income and so forth. And then they win the lottery. They get that apartment or house. Meanwhile, there's hundreds of other people out there who applied and didn't get accepted. The government should not be setting up a lottery. We're not meant to work that way. And going back to the general welfare clause, that is the way the government is supposed to work, on a general overall basis, providing service on an equal basis as much as possible to all of its citizens, not handpicking winners and losers.
All right. And my only comment is that I go to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which says the power is not expressly given to the federal government or reserved to the states. This is the ultimate expression of local control, local power. The Congress has given CDBG funds, community development block grants, which was the response to managing housing from Washington and giving it to the local authorities or governments to implement. So I really don't have a problem. To me, this is the ultimate expression of local control. The federal government is saying, look, here's money. If you think you can do a better job than we can, and I think that we can, make use of it. So with that, I think it's probably time to call the question. Crystal?
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Johnson? Mayor Collins?
Yes. And with that, I think we're adjourned.